Calling today's meeting to order. I'm Kayla Herman, the city attorney. So I am, for the first time ever, calling to order the Lewiston City Council work session on December 4th, 2023, and we are in the Bell Building at 215 D Street. Mayor Johnson and Council President Lidke are both gone today. Council President Lidke was having some internet issues, so my understanding is we do not have anyone on Zoom. But we do have a quorum of councilors present, so we can proceed with the meeting. So the first order of business under Lewiston City Code 2-26G3 states that if both the mayor and council president are absent, the city attorney calls the council to order. And then if a quorum of councilors is present, which we have, those city councilors present shall elect by a majority vote of the councilors present a temporary chairperson for this city council meeting. So at this time, I would need council to elect a temporary chairperson. That can be done by a motion. Yes.
I nominate Jim Kleberg.
Second?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, any discussion on electing Councilor Kleberg to preside over this meeting? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Councilor Kleberg, it's all yours.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order, and first order of business is our Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand and join us in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody. Next on the agenda is citizen comments. This is an opportunity for citizens to address the council on agenda items or other items they wish to bring to the attention of the council. Citizens are encouraged to discuss operational issues in advance with the mayor. In consideration of others wishing to speak, please limit your remarks to 3 minutes. Do you have any city council or city citizen comments this evening? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to discussion items. Under item 4, first up is our Idaho State flood insurance.
Good afternoon, council. My name is Luke Antonich, city engineer, and I am here to introduce the Idaho Department of Water Resources State Floodplain Manager, Maureen O'Shea. She dutifully sent her presentation in by email, and unfortunately the staff member who received that is out sick today, as is the person who was going to introduce her and the person who was going to introduce her for that person. We've had a number of staff fall sick today. Do you guys have paper copies of it? We do. Did everyone receive one?
I got a digital like this.
Got digital? Okay, we're good. She's working at saving it to a thumb drive, and I can give it to Erin so that we can get it up for anyone who's watching online. But in the meantime, while she pulls that up, I'll just let council know this conversation kind of came out of a request due to the number of incidents we've had of flooding of residents' houses this year. Of course, we all are familiar with the stormwater event on June 9th, which was pretty unprecedented for around here. It was a very large storm and a lot of water very quickly. And so due to that and several other incidents, staff and I believe possibly the mayor thought it prudent to get Maureen in front of you guys and just let you know the information that is available and the resources that are available through the state. So, give us 1 second and we'll see if we can't get that up on the screen.
Thanks for the delay. I am Maureen O'Shea, and I've been with Idaho Department of Water Resources a little over 8 years now, doing the floodplain program. So y'all had a real nice big event back on June 9th.
June.
June 9th of
June was a
2023.
storm.
Storm.
Well, I thought that, okay, the storm, all right.
This was the
Yeah.
flooding downtown, right? Or,
Yes.
okay. And so y'all know about that. National Flood Insurance Program covers properties that have flood insurance. Okay, your homeowner's insurance policy does not cover flood. Flood is defined as surface water, so anything that comes from the ground up, not rain that comes down. It also covers, incidentally, mudslides, and the reason I would tell you about that is because we've had a number of floods in the counties nearby and here. And if your home is downstream or downhill of that flood, and it turns, rain happens, we've seen it on TV and other places where the rain turns into slush and it comes down. Now, landslide is different, that's mostly rock and gravel, but this is that slurry mud. If that entered your house and you had a flood insurance policy, then yes, you would be covered. Now, to participate in the National Flood Insurance Program, the federal government set it up back in 1968 that the city or the county that wanted their people to have the opportunity to purchase flood insurance, the city or county would join the NFIP. So when you join the NFIP, then those citizens that choose to purchase flood insurance in your jurisdiction have that ability. We do have 174 cities and counties that participate in the National Flood Insurance Program, but you guys can do the math, we have 243 cities and counties total, 44 counties, 199 cities. So not everybody participates. When the city or the county decided to join, and that was probably before all of us, and one of the things I did not put in this was when did Lewiston join? And I didn't look that up, and I apologize for that. But I believe y'all joined in the 80s, might have been late 70s, but you joined, the city council that was sitting at that time joined the NFIP and said, yes, we agree to participate in the National Flood Insurance Program. Therefore, we will adopt a flood ordinance, and we will enforce the minimum standards of the National Flood Insurance Program. So anybody can purchase a National Flood Insurance Program policy. You don't have to be in the floodplain to purchase a policy. You can be on top of a hill. You could be downstream of Dworshak and think it's wise. You can be protected by a levee and think it's wise to purchase a policy. Again, Mother Nature can be right wicked. Treasure Valley, for Ada County, Boise, all the way out to the state line, they have 3 dams above them, Lucky Peak, Arrow Rock, and Anderson, and everybody downstream believes they're safe because the dams will protect them. Well, as you guys experienced on June 9th, you understood that Mother Nature just decided to dump randomly on part of town. Did she cover the whole town or whole county, or mostly just messed with that one section of town?
The orchards too.
So, so I think, do I control the, because I think I'm on slide 6, if somebody's turning my pages for me. So I had a map on page, or slide 6. There's a map of the floodplain in Lewiston. Lewiston is protected by the levees from Clearwater River. And I'm not sure how well protected you are from the Snake River, because you're right here at the confluence. We know that Army Corps of Engineers owns your levees, and as a result, they've done a very good job of keeping them maintained and whatnot. We never anticipate an issue. But just because you have a levee or just because you have a dam doesn't always mean 100% protection. Mother Nature can melt everything in 2 days if she wants to be right wicked. So again, you're familiar with that. In order to have coverage on a structure, the building must have at least 2 rigid walls and a roof. So somebody that has a pole barn out there in the field, it's only got 1 wall or 2 walls to protect the hay or the animals or whatever, that would not be covered by the NFIP. But I like that photo that they have up there. We'll go back a slide or two, the one they have up there. The slide that had the floodplain on it. I know I'm being listened to somewhere. Number 6? That one. Okay, the flood maps for Lewiston are old, they're outdated. We do have some rough draft maps in the queue right now. FEMA is, the word I was taught recently was glacial, how they move forward. It's very, 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 very slow. I believe the study started 3-4 years ago, pre-COVID, we'll say, at least 3 years ago, maybe more. And they're still working their way through it. The flood maps here are not of good quality. They're 1970s, 1980s technology, so they're not showing the true extent of what the risk is here in Lewiston. And when you purchase flood insurance from the National Flood Insurance Program, you purchase for your structure, and usually each structure is separate. An accessory structure on your property is automatically insured up to 15% of the house. So we'll just use round numbers because they're not real, but if you had a house worth $100,000, they never count the land because in theory your land is still there afterwards. So you insured your house for $100,000, they would insure your detached garage or your shop for $15,000, 15% of whatever the structure is worth. Well, in my experience in Idaho, there's lots of homes about 1,000 square feet, 1,200 square feet, and a shop in the backyard is 3,000 square feet. So in that case, you would really want a separate policy for both structures to cover both. Next slide, please. National Flood Insurance Program operates where you have 2 parts to your policy. You have the structure part and then you have the contents part. So if you were a landlord or a tenant, you usually are, insuring your structure, but you would recommend that the tenant have their own for their contents. And same goes for businesses. There's an awful lot of businesses in the floodplain, they rent from a landlord and they are not aware that they're in a floodplain. They have all of their business contents in there and they don't realize that they're at risk. And as a consequence, nationwide, when a business, and again, we're including Texas, Florida, New York, but nationwide, 40% of the businesses that are flooded do not reopen. So that's always a concern for city council is the resiliency. If we have something bad, how quick can our people open back up? Our tax coffers are drastically affected if a flood did come through here, people didn't have insurance. How many cannot rebuild, don't have the means to rebuild, and you're no longer collecting taxes on the structure and the property. You're only collecting taxes on the land until they rebuild, which can be an awful long time. So just things to think about. Next slide, please. So with the National Flood Insurance Program, you guys are in the regular on the right-hand column. So a single-family residence is insurable for up to $250,000. Non-residential structure might also be a building with more than 4 residential units. There have insurance coverage up to $500,000. Your contents, residential is $100,000, non-residential $500,000. There's a few communities that are in the emergency program in Idaho, but that's not Lewiston, so we won't cover Again, next slide, the general rules, policy is 1 year, so when you buy it, it's good for a year. If you ask to cancel it, it would cancel at the end of that 365 days. You wouldn't get a refund for canceling halfway through the term of the policy. It's one policy per building, except as how I indicated on sheds and whatnot. When you buy a new house or a new to you house, and you're in the floodplain, your mortgage, your lender is gonna require you to have flood insurance because the house is in the floodplain, then your insurance starts that day. If you don't have flood insurance and you just decide, you know what, the risk is increasing, I wanna buy a policy, there's a 30-day wait period. So just something to think about. And flood insurance is available without the 30-day wait period if it's a post-wildfire. So there was a wildfire up, I don't know the names of all the communities, kind of across the Clearwater River from Peck, but up the hill there was a flood up there. So anybody below that chose to purchase flood insurance policy within, I think it's 60 or 90 days of the containment of that fire, they do not have to have the wait period. If they chose today, because we've been really wet for 4 or 5 days and I'm starting to worry about that hill coming down at me, there's a 30-day wait period. Next slide. Your flood insurance policy is often, it uses an elevation certificate that gives the facts about the property. What is the flood zone? What's the elevation? How high do they expect the water to be at that site? How high is the finished floor in that site? Does it have flood openings? And so any home built in the floodplain should have an elevation certificate from when it was built. City or county says when they join, we're going to adopt and enforce the minimum standards, and they should have one of these on file for every home that is in the floodplain. Occasionally it's missed. Occasionally we don't have that information. But again, those are done most often by a surveyor, occasionally by an engineer. So I get phone calls regular from real estate agents. Hey, we're getting ready to close. We just figured out it was in the floodplain. We need an elevation certificate. Well, if the city or county doesn't have one on file for that address, then you need to go hire a surveyor to get one done. And that's how they rate the structure for flood insurance. Now, 2-3 years ago, FEMA went to what they're calling risk rating 2.0. They have a computer that generates, and I couldn't even explain it if I tried, generates the policy price. And you don't have to have an elevation certificate, but it's generating it on not site-specific information. It's kind of a general, the computer's doing it. Whereas if you have the elevation certificate on file with your insurance agent, you're gonna get a better rate. And next slide, please. Ways to reduce the premium is to require people to build 2 feet above what the map says. So if the map said that the floodplain was 1,000, the elevation was 1,000, and you require people to build 2 feet above, they get a discount on their insurance because they've reduced the risk. But not everybody's in favor of that. Some communities have 1 foot of freeboard. Kootenai County, for instance, has 3 foot. You go up to Lemhi County and they have 18 inches. And they picked 18 inches because FEMA rounds up and you get credit for 2, even though you only had 1.5. So again, it has to do with how resilient you would like to be. Do you have a question?
No.
Okay, don't want to miss questions. As well as the lowest floor, you know, of your finished floor of living space being at or above that number on the map, the National Flood Insurance Program requires the equipment be up. So that would be your furnace, your water heater, your HVAC unit, your duct work. We all know that when floods happen in June, it's usually pretty warm, and we want to dry out our homes as fast as possible. Well, if the ductwork failed because it got wet, how soon can the HVAC guy get in to redo our ductwork so we can dry out our house and prevent mold? But flood happens, you know, year round. But we do want our ductwork for comfort for us, but also to help dry out everything. And so that's one of the reasons ductwork is above. Next slide, please. In the event someone, I already touched on this a little bit, decides they don't want to have flood insurance, yes, they can cancel it, but it's always a one-year policy. At the end of the year, then it wouldn't be renewed per their request. Again, a lot of people say, well, it hasn't flooded, it's a 100-year flood, and so it hasn't flooded here in 50 years, I'm good to go for 50 more. Well, the 100-year flood event is true in a sense, but that's a decimal. Okay, it's the 1% chance flood. You have a 1% chance of having that flood every single year, but the decimal is 1/100th, so it became the 100-year flood, and people think, oh, well, I'm good to go for a really long time, and we can watch the news, and we can see Mother Nature likes to move around and share her trauma with different communities at different times. Next slide, please. One of the reasons we want flood insurance instead of disaster assistance, we see that on the news also. FEMA goes in masse to, after Hurricane whoever, and runs down there, and there's FEMA everywhere and all that. Well, maximum they pay out is about $35,000, and most people don't qualify for it. They're a tenant. So you're much better off having your own insurance and being in charge than waiting for FEMA to come in. The other thing is disaster assistance requires presidential declaration. So the mayor of Lewiston would call the county and say, hey, I'm going to declare a disaster for the June 9th event. And then the county would assess and say, okay, yeah, it qualifies for a disaster in the county. Then the county asks the governor, and then the governor asks the president. So it has to go through all these steps and stages, and we in Idaho do not have the population or the density of, say, downtown Houston, Miami, St. Petersburg, these places that have flooded, New York City, that have flooded recently. So it's very hard for Idaho to get a presidentially declared disaster for individual assistance for those homeowners or businesses that got flooded. What we do get, the presidential declaration, is usually for the infrastructure, public infrastructure, roads, bridges, culverts, that type of deal. But the last time Idaho had disaster assistance for the individual, the homeowners and business owners, was 1997, Shoshone County, Benawah, up that way. So again, it's not very common because, again, we just don't have the density to trigger getting a disaster. So hoping that that's there is not a good option. Next slide, please. One of the reasons a city or a county chooses to participate in the National Flood Insurance Program is in order to be eligible for some of these different flood and other related grants. Building resilient infrastructure in communities, that's about a 3 or 4 year old grant. It's annual, and you're competing for money within the state and sometimes even at a federal level. So flood mitigation, that's always just flood related, whereas the building resilient infrastructure could be fire, flood, earthquake, tsunami, not that we should have one of those here, but it covers kind of all the different types of disasters that we could have. Idaho Office of Emergency Management handles that. FEMA gives the money to the state. The state has an office, Idaho Office of Emergency Management, that processes those applications and manages those grants. Almost all those grants have a 25% match. Nowadays, almost any big infrastructure that you wanted to apply for a grant for, whether you were upgrading the water plant, the sewer plant, and now you have a 25% match. 25% match is a whole lot easier than footing the whole bill yourself. But again, these projects need to be listed in the city-county hazard mitigation plan, and then you have to have the match. But it's usually easier to come up with a 25% match than the whole. If the council chose not to participate in the National Flood Insurance Program, you wouldn't be the first, wouldn't be the last, but I would caution you, when you did want one of these grants, you're going to score less points in the whole, and you might lose a perfectly good project getting funded that because you didn't participate in the National Flood Insurance Program. Next slide, please. There's two ways to purchase flood insurance. You can go through your homeowner's insurance agent. You can go through your agent, bundle it all up. There's some companies that don't do the flood insurance program, but you can find an agent on the floodsmart.gov website. Phone numbers there in case people were interested in that. And next slide, I will field any questions you guys have for me. Yes, sir.
So if the city opts in, then who solicits the homeowners or gets them the information?
Just depends, it's wide open. In the perfect world, when you bought your house, the realtor would have informed you that you were in the floodplain, and you would then, and if you had a mortgage, then you would be required to purchase a policy. But some communities will put the flood maps on their website so people can look it up. The state website with IDWR we have flood hazard maps, and people can pull it up. You have very little floodplain, except for, the creek and the river. It doesn't show where you might have stormwater issues. Whereas some cities where you have stormwater issues would be mapped. So does that help?
And stormwater issues qualify.
They could qualify, absolutely, because if they flood more than 2 houses or 2 acres, there's 2 thresholds, either or, and you could qualify for National Flood Insurance Program. We've had that happen down, I'm most familiar with, I work out of the Boise office, so I'm more familiar with what happens in Treasure Valley, but there was an irrigation canal that the culvert going under the road failed, and a whole bunch, 10, 12 homes flooded. Well, had they a policy, they would qualify for flood insurance because it covered more than 2 homes and more than 2 acres and or. So, we encourage people to have it, but I've also been told we're in Idaho and we do as we please, and that's okay too. But we just encourage people to take care of themselves, have a policy. If you're not in the floodplain and you're behind the levee, I used to be able to quote you, your policy's less than $500 a year. I can't quote that anymore because the new computer doing everything, we don't know the basics that we used to know.
Any other questions?
I just have one.
Okay.
You were talking about the levees and rain is causing the flood, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so you're up on top of a hillside, you don't have another hill behind you, and the water, 2 or 3 inches every however long, is going to slough off the hillside and damage your property. Is that fall into that category?
No, but if that house was at the edge of the river and subsidence, the National Flood Insurance Program covers subsidence. So when the water keeps sloughing off. But in the case that you brought up that the hillside's just going off, I don't think so, because that's usually more landslide than mud. There's a different consistency. And again, I wouldn't be the one calling, what actually happened out
Yeah, it
there.
would be more of a landslide.
Yeah, I would think that. So I wouldn't, but that was a good question. Yes, sir.
Yeah, as the city council, what are the steps that you would recommend we take?
Well, you all do participate in the National Flood Insurance Program. Your building official is your floodplain administrator. So every house that is built in the floodplain, they evaluate it to ensure that it is built properly and correctly. Since early 2000s, the building code has had the flood code in it. So residential code 322 has all the same regulations, the minimum standards of the NFIP. So we just, really want to be sure communities continue to, monitor that. Some communities decide once a year, we'll send out a note to all the homes that are in the floodplain. They'll have their GIS unit draw up a map and pull down the addresses and send a letter saying, hey, your structure appears to be in the floodplain. City council, mayor, we encourage you to buy a policy. but we can't make people, right? We just encourage them. Not everybody knows they're in a floodplain. They inherited the house from Nana, Grandpa, and they don't know they're in the floodplain, so they don't know that maybe that would have been a good idea to do.
So our ducks are basically in a row then?
I believe Lewiston is doing all that they're supposed to. I believe it's handled out of your planning and building department. I knew Mr. Smith, but I understand he retired. So I don't recall the name of the new gentleman down in building, but it's the building of, you're usually the chief building official. Yes, ma'am.
So our only floodplain that Lewiston has is slide 6, correct?
That's what I was able to bring up, correct. And if you have questions in the future, don't hesitate to email me. Yes, I have a phone, but the email's better. As you guys probably have the same things happen, people call me and say, this is Mrs. Smith, Mr. Jones, and I have a question about the floodplain, and they leave me their phone number. Whereas if they send me an email, they give me the property address, and they give me a lot of information, and I can look it up, and I don't have to play phone tag. You know, hey, I'm returning your call, I don't know what property this is about. So, but I do encourage people, if they have questions, don't hesitate to email.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Informative presentation. And we'll go ahead and move on to item B, additional opioid settlements.
Good afternoon, Council. Melinda Rose, City Grant Manager, and we have another opportunity for opioid settlement. It's another class action in relation to the opioid settlement that we're already involved in. And so I need to ask you if you would like to participate in this additional settlement or not. If you would like to, then we do nothing. If you would like to not be involved, then we need to let them know by January. So I think I gave you some historical information on that. Is there any question in that regard? Kathy?
It really doesn't cost us anything to participate in this, correct?
That's correct.
And it seems like it ties well in with what we're already doing, so I'm in favor of continuing to participate in this.
Counselor,
Yeah, I would make the motion to remain in the opioid class action lawsuit against McKinsey and Company Incorporated and related entities and authorize the mayor to sign the necessary documents.
Second.
sounds reasonable to me. I mean, just from what I'm reading here, we're already part of it.
Yes, we are already part, and we already are receiving funding. This additional settlement's not going to be a huge extra amount of money, but it's all beneficial.
Okay.
Acting Councilor President.
Yes.
Can these funds, and that's kind of separate, I'm fine continuing and being a part of this. I just had a question. Can we use these funds for like narcotic dogs, maybe increase in that, or does that count under the allowed funding for use?
The uses are very, very restricted and are mostly for education and recovery,
Yeah.
rather than the dogs that'll help with our enforcement. So, yeah, Captain Clone does have a team put together to decide how to use that. I think it's mostly going to be utilized through like the health department or the jail system to just help people get the right information and resources to have recovery.
Thank you.
We had a motion and a second. We need a vote. Voice vote.
Voice vote.
All in favor of staying in this class action suit, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are you here for the other one too?
Yes.
Hey,
Okay,
so,
good.
speaking of class action suits, move on to item C for the Burn Justice Assistance Grant Program.
Yes, thank you again. So I'm here to talk about the Edward Byrne Justice Assistance Grant Program. And this is a grant that is annual, and how the city of Lewiston is eligible for funding is based on our statistics. And so I did a little slide because there's so much information, I gotta remember to use my slides. But this basically tells you about the grant program and what those funds can be used for. It's pretty wide open what we can use those funds for. And there is an allocation formula based on the numbers that we submit, our crime numbers that we submit. And that's how, so it's divvied out to the state and then down further to the local governments. And so the city is eligible because of our data. The Nez Perce County was not eligible, and so Nez Perce County does not receive any funding, but the city is, again, eligible for funding. However, the city does need to have an MOU with the county to use those funds. So these are the 2 years that are in question, 2017 and 2023. Lewiston received allocations for both those years. In 2017, we were approved for $10,015 to be used for body-worn cameras. There is an agreement in place from the Justice Department, but nothing was ever done with that. So here I am trying to clean up that paperwork, and in doing that, I found that we were required to have the MOU, but I can't find that we ever did have an MOU in place. So 2023, we were allocated funds again, and so I'm coming to you with both 2017 and 2023 MOUs. The 2017 funds, I did go to EJA, I guess it's called, and got an extension on that grant, and they are allowing us to put that towards our current contract in the amount of $104,000, so that's pretty cool. And then the 2023, we applied for and were approved to use the funding for a canine. So in order to use the money, we need to have MOUs with the county, and that is what I brought to you today.
Is that I know canines can be quite the hefty penny. Is that using all of the funds for that?
It is. And in your packet, I provided the quote for that dog. And so, yeah. And the additional funding, since we were allocated 10,000 and I think the canine alone is 9,000, we'll use, any additional funds for the supplies and training of that dog.
And this would be the second canine we have.
Yes. It is an expansion to the program,
Okay,
so.
that's awesome. Thank you.
Question, Rose. On this page, I don't know which page it was it numbered? It showed the different counties
Yes.
and the allocations. And there's an asterisk next to Nez Perce County. And when I went up there to try to understand that, it says, counties that have an asterisk under the direct allocation column did not submit the level of violent crime a direct award from BJA, but are in the disparate grouping indicated by the shaded area. So I'm wondering, and it shows that both of the time periods,
Yes.
it wasn't, and is that Nez Perce County did not submit the information?
Either they didn't submit the information or they didn't qualify. So I don't know in the full scheme of what information gets reported and how that reporting factors into the money that gets allocated.
But if Lewiston is within the county and we qualify, then it seems like they would qualify also.
Yeah, it's my understanding that the county did not submit statistics.
Thank you. I'm good.
Any questions? So, need a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve the memorandums of understanding between the City of Lewiston and Nez Perce County for the 2017 and 2023 Burn Justice Assistance Program, the JAG program.
Second.
The motion's been made and seconded. Further discussion?
Counselor Towsley,
Aye.
Counselor Schroeder,
Aye.
Counselor Spickelmeyer,
Aye.
Counselor Kleber,
Aye.
Counselor Forsman.
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Move on to item 5, unfinished and new business. City councilor comments. Do we have any this evening? Mr. Towsley.
I would just like to invite people who are here and anyone who's listening to a concert that the LC Choir is putting on tomorrow night at the Silverthorne Theater. And I know it's the holiday season, but if you feel like having a palate cleanser, this is not holiday music. This is entitled Plenty Good Room, Spiritual, Civil Rights, and Gospel Music. And this is by the LC Concert Choir with special guest Professor Terry Buffington, who is a cultural anthropologist and civil rights activist. She and her husband both were heavily involved in the civil rights movement in the South in the mid to late 60s. And this is taking place tomorrow night. That's December 5th at 7:30 at the Silverthorne, and it's free and open to the public.
Councilor Schroeder.
The Chaz Health Clinic is having their annual homeless memorial, and it's to honor the homeless that have passed away during this year. And it will be held Thursday, December 14th, 11:30 to 1. Dress warm, it is outside, but it is a very worthwhile time to spend.
Yes.
And the other thing I have is I did attend the Lewis Clark Civic Theater's, Lewis Clark Civic Theater's Christmas story, which was really quite moving and funny and a lot of real life going on in it. It was great. So if you haven't seen it, it's still going on, please join that.
Anybody else? Have any city board and commission liaison updates? I'm off the hook for another week, so I don't have anything. Mayor comments, he's out of town. Advisory board and commission appointments. We do have one to consider tonight, Airport Authority Board. We'll be considering the reappointment of Lori Wilson to a 3-year term. This is an action item.
You move, you have to make the motion, and then we second it. Yes.
Any counselor can.
The mayor always does it, so that's why I thought he had to.
Probably an effort
Yes.
to get us moving.
The Airport Authority Board is governed by a joint powers agreement, so
Oh,
not in
okay.
chapter 2
Yeah.
of city code, so similar, but any counselor can make this motion.
Oh, okay, thank you for that.
Dang, you're good.
Do you have a motion or you want me to make it?
I can make it if you want.
Okay.
I move to approve the appointment of Lori Wilson to the 3-year term on the Airport Authority Board.
Second.
I have a motion and a second approving Lori Wilson, the Airport Authority Board. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Agenda topics, do we have any agenda topics we want to address? Only have one meeting between
Next Monday.
of vacation, as it were. Okay, well, seeing none, entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much,
Sure.
Jim.
everybody, for